What's up? Joey here at School of Motion, and welcome to day 24 of 30 days of After Effects. In today's video, we're gonna talk about breaking down an effect into multiple layers inside of After Effects and using a compositing mindset to achieve a specific look that you're going for. On top of that, we're gonna learn some cool tricks about ways to make things seem a little goopy. A quick shout out to Mount MoGraph, another amazing tutorial site, because one of the tricks that Matt showed in one of his videos, I used in this video, because I thought it was great. So go check out Mount MoGraph. Don't forget to sign up for a free student account so you can grab the project files from this lesson, as well as assets from any other lesson on the site. Now let's hop into After Effects and get started. So in this video, I'm gonna show you a few tricks, and I don't normally like to just show tricks, but what I'm hoping that everyone gets out of this is that one of the things you can do in After Effects is you can use effects in ways that they're sort of, I don't know, they're not really intended to be used. And if you think more like a compositor, you can get so much control over the way your image looks, okay? And so specifically what I'm going to talk about is how to get this kind of cartoony look, but have complete and total control over it. You know, After Effects is designed to try and almost prevent you from using it the way that I like to use it sometimes, because it tries to hide complexity from you by making things simple. There's a cartoon effect that you can use. But if you really want to dial in a look and be very specific, then a lot of times it's better to just roll your own stuff. So we're going to start out. I'm going to show you how I did this kind of gooey popping thing, and I have to first just say that this effect is not something I figured out how to do on my own. I sort of, I learned the basic trick a long time ago, and then I saw a Mount MoGraph video, which did this cool little trick that I stole, where you can get these holes in there. So let's hop in. Let me show you how this thing is all put together. So let's make a new comp. We'll just do 1920 by 1080. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna start by making a circle. And the way I usually do it, I just double click the ellipse tool, makes a giant ellipse. And then I tap U twice to bring up my my size property. And let's just make this like 100 pixel or maybe 200 pixel. And I don't want a stroke on it, so I'm gonna turn the stroke to 0 and turn the fill on. So there we go. So we have a white ball right there. All right, and I'm gonna name this ball 01. And so what I wanna do is I wanna have this thing split, right? Like a cell or something like that. And this is pretty easy. So I'm gonna duplicate it so there's 2 of them. I'm gonna hit P and I'm gonna separate the dimensions. And I'm gonna put a keyframe on X position for both of these. So then I'm gonna jump forward. Let's say we want this to take a second. So let's go forward 1 second, right? So by the way I move around so fast is page down and page up, move forward and backwards frames. And if you hold shift, it does 10 frames. So if I want to move forward a second, it's shift, page down, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 24 frames. Really quickly, keyboard shortcuts are important. So let's move these, and let's move them in equal distance, all right? So for this ball, why don't we add 300 pixels to it, okay? And this is a cool thing you can do in After Effects, is just select a value and type in minus 300 or plus 300. And this is a way you can be very, very precise with your values. Okay, so this is what's happening. Wonderful, we're done. Look at that, perfect. So what I want is I want it to feel like at the beginning these things are joined together and they're pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling and they can't quite make it, and then they pop. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to adjust our animation curves. And so what and I'm actually going to do this a little bit differently than I did for my demo, and see if we can get even more of a cool kind of popping feel to it. So why don't we go to the halfway mark here? And at the halfway mark, I actually want them to still be connected. I want it to really have a slow build. So why don't we say this frame here, I'm gonna put keyframes here, and I'm gonna move those keyframes to the middle. So now if we look at our animation curves, let's make this a little bigger. Okay, so you can see that we're easing into this value, and then whoosh, and then it accelerates at the end. Okay, and I want it to even take longer to accelerate. So I'm gonna pull these Bezier handles out like this. There we go. So now when we play this, you can see that it's really slow at the beginning, and I want it to be even slower. And so what I'm going to do is pull the initial Bezier handle out on both of these keyframes. Okay, and now when it actually pops out, I want that to happen really quickly. So let me move this much closer, and let's take a look at this. There we go. You'll notice every single thing I do, I sort of go through this process, because if you're just animating without thinking about why, you know, like why should this animate this way, then you're just animating randomly, and your animation's not gonna, it's just not gonna be very good if you don't at least take the time to think it through. All right, so it hits here. I want it to overshoot a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go forward maybe 3 frames and copy these keyframes here. And then I can just go into the curve for each one and just pull this curve up a little bit, right? So now I get a little bit of an overshoot, like this. And I'll do the same thing on this one. The great thing is once you really understand animation curves in After Effects, you can just look at this visually and make sure it's doing what you want. So now you get that nice little overshoot and it bounces back. And it feels like it's sticking. Cool. All right, so now that we've got this, how do we get that nice gooey look? Now, this trick, I don't know who first came up with it, but it's at least a decade old. Someone on MoGraph.net or Creative Cow posted it, and I learned it from them, and I don't know who it was. But I will give credit. Mount MoGraph had this awesome idea for how to get these kind of holes in the middle of it. So first, let's get a nice gooey-looking thing. And the way you do this is you just, I just do it with an adjustment layer, and I'll just call this goo. All right. And what you do is you blur these. And what you're doing is you're blurring them because then the contours of them mush together. That's what a blur does, right? But obviously you don't want a blurry ball. So the next step is you add a levels effect. And you change the levels effect to affect the alpha channel. Okay, now, alpha channel means transparency. And so because we blurred this, you can see that rather than having like a nice hard edge where there's absolute transparency and no transparency, the blur sort of creates a gradient, right? And so that's why you've got this range of values in the alpha channel going from black to white. And basically what we want to do is get rid of all the gray values. We either want the alpha channel to be white or black. We don't want much gray because that's what's creating the blur. And so what we can do is we can take this arrow, this black input, and this arrow, which is the white input, and if we compress them, bring them closer together, and you can see visually what it's doing. When I move this one, it gets rid of black. When I move this one, it creates more white. And if you don't want to do it too hard because then you'll get those crunchy edges, but something like that, right? You get them pretty close together, and now this is what you get. You see, it mushes them together. It's pretty cool. And if you turn this off, you can see that if you keep these arrows in the middle, it'll even pretty much maintain the same size as the layers that you started with. Fantastic. All right, and so now, if we wanted to, I might look at these curves one more time. It might be cool to stretch this out even more like this so that we get a little bit more time in the middle here where they're connected. There we go. Cool. All right, so now we've got that. Now let's add those holes in the middle. All right, and this is a really simple trick. So what you do is you figure out where you want the holes to sort of start, happening. Like maybe right in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make an ellipse, and I'm going to draw it like this, and I'm going to make it like a gray color or something. Make it like that. Okay. Let's zoom in. So I got one ellipse here. All right, so this would be ellipse. And move the anchor point so it's in the middle. All right, and then I'm going to duplicate it. And this ellipse, we can make a little thinner, like this maybe.
I'll duplicate that, and then I'll have another one down here, and maybe this will be a little one. And then I'll duplicate it, and maybe have another like kind of stretchy one like this. And you just want them to feel like they're varied, right? Like you don't want to notice a pattern in it. So something like that. Okay, and then let's go back a frame. So I don't want those to appear until maybe this frame. So I'm gonna hit the left bracket, so now that's the first frame they exist. And I'm just gonna animate the scale of each one. So I'm gonna put a keyframe on scale, and I'm gonna unlink all of the scale properties. So that way, what I wanna do is I want them to start kind of like thin, like this. And then, by the time we get to here, okay, I want them to be really thin. And I also am going to have to move them. So I'm going to also put a position keyframe on each of these. All right, so now let's go forward. So this is going to be the last frame where these things actually exist, because after that, we now have separate objects. So let's go to this last frame, and let's just adjust these. Okay, and then I'm going to scale them. I'm going to make them a lot wider. Right? And because they're getting wider, they might get a little thinner too. All right, and this is what it's gonna do, okay? And you can see, I may wanna actually ease the position keyframes on each of these. I probably wanna ease the position and the scale on both of these, because the position of those two balls is easing. And you can kind of see already what it's doing. I remember I saw this tutorial and I thought it was so clever. I couldn't wait to, not steal, but give credit. All right, so you get this, and then this should be the last frame that we see these, okay? There we go. And just like that, you get this nice little goop. Awesome. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pre-compose all four of these, and we'll call these holes. And I thought it was helpful to put a turbulent displace effect on it with like a little bit of a lower size and not a very big amount, just to make them not so perfect. Okay, and then set the transfer mode of this holes layer to silhouette alpha. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna knock out anything where there's an alpha channel. Okay, so now I've created transparency there. Cool. All right, so now here's where we get into the meat of this tutorial. So we've got this neat thing, right? But there's no depth to it, there's no color. And what's cool is you can treat After Effects a little bit more like a compositing program, right? Like, you know, when you're starting out, what you're tempted to do is try and just like, you know, let's make this shape the color we want. And then let's make this shape the color we want. And then if we want a drop shadow, we'll put a drop shadow effect on this. And if we want a stroke, we'll add a stroke to this. And you know, you can do it that way. But if you want to really have total control, treat After Effects like a compositing program. So here's what I mean. Let's and by the way, I haven't organized this very well at all. So let me just quickly take all of these pre-comps and stick them in here. Take our comp, and we'll call this goop. All right, so now I'm gonna take my goop comp, and this is where we're gonna composite. Okay, so first thing, let's pick some nice colors, and we're gonna use the trick that I showed in my color hack video, where we're gonna use Adobe Color, which is one of my favorite tools now. And let's just try and find like some interesting looking, you know, like this is a pretty cool color palette. So let's use that. So first I'm gonna make a background, and let's make the background, we'll use that blue color. That's fine. All right, now for the goop, I want to try and I want this kind of faux 3D but cartoony feel. Okay, that's what I want. So how can we get that? Well, I did it by building it up in layers. All right, so first let's figure out what's the base color of this thing. Base color. I want to pick a base color for this. So I'm going to rename this comp base color. I'm going to add a generate fill effect to it. And let's pick one of these colors, okay? That's cool. I like that color, that's nice. Okay, there we go. So now let's start adding layers to this, okay? If I wanted a nice little stroke around it, how might I do that? Well, I could try to do it on this same layer, but there's no need. I can just duplicate it, and we'll call this stroke. Now, what color should the stroke be? Well, let's not worry about that yet. Let's figure out how can we make a stroke from this. So there's a bunch of different ways you can get an outline for something in After Effects. One way is you could actually add a layer style to it that will do it. That does create some issues. Layer styles can act funny with motion blur and things like that. So I actually use a more compositing type of way to do it. And the way you do it is this. You add an effect called a simple choker. And what this does is it expands or contracts, the alpha channel of an object, okay? And so if you expand, basically this is what I'm going to do. If I duplicated my stroke like this, on the bottom copy, if I expanded my matte out, and then I said alpha inverted matte of the original. So basically I'm expanding my layer, and then I'm using the original version of that layer as a matte, and it creates a stroke like this, okay? Pretty clever. So we're going to do that. Now the simple choker isn't going to give us, it doesn't let you pull it out that far. It doesn't let you pull that alpha channel out as far as I'd like. So what I'm going to use is actually a different effect in the channel menu called Minimax. And Minimax kind of does a similar thing. It does it in a different way, but it'll work well for what we're going to do. So what I want to do is first set the channel to color, alpha and color, okay? Because I want to expand the alpha channel. And the default setting for this is maximum, and if I expand the radius, you'll see what it does. It sort of expands out all the pixels. So if I expand this out a little bit, now if I can basically knock out the original footprint of this layer, I will have an outline, which would be great. So one way you can do this while only using one layer is to use one of my favorite effects, which is Channel CC Composite. And then you can say composite the original as a silhouette alpha. And so this basically takes the original layer before you used Minimax on it, and it composites it on top of the result of the Minimax in a silhouette alpha composite mode, which knocks out a layer wherever there's an alpha. So now you've got this nice stroke, and you even get a little stroke where there's goop there. And you can control the thickness of the stroke by adjusting the Minimax number. So you really quickly get this interactive stroke. And what's cool is this is actually a real stroke. This is transparent everywhere except where you see a line. So then if I bring my fill effect down here and turn it back on, I can easily colorize that fill too. All right, so let's pick a darker color for that fill. Well, let's see what happens if I use a lighter color like a yellow. It's kind of hard to see that. So why don't we just make a nice dark, let's do like a nice dark kind of purplish color. There we go. All right, cool. So already you've got this sort of cartoony, cel-shaded looking thing because you've got a nice stroke and you have total control over the stroke because it's on its own layer. And if you want to then just play with the opacity of it, make it less or more, it's really easy to do that. All right, so now let's try to get some 3D depth to this. So again, you can try and do it all on one layer by stacking a bunch of effects, but I like separating it out and then being able to easily mix and composite between them. So let's duplicate the base color again, and we'll call this, why don't we just call this depth? All right, so what I want to do, this is the strategy. I am going to use an effect in the perspective group. It's called Bevel Alpha, right? And if I crank up the edge thickness, what it does, it's the same as the bevel tool in Photoshop. And it sort of takes the contour of the image and it makes one side dark and one side light. You can control the light angle, you can control the thickness, and you can control the intensity. But it just looks hard. It looks like I don't know. It like there's this hard edge to it. It doesn't look soft. So that's not going to work all that well unless I can treat it. And so what I want to do is first I want to create this depth in a way that I can composite it on top of my base color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill that layer with a perfectly gray color. So I'm going to set the brightness to 50. I'm going to set the saturation to 0. And now I've got perfectly gray color with the bevel alpha effect on it. And I can turn the light intensity up like this. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a blur effect. So I'm going to fast blur this. And you can see that now it's just sort of mushing all that together. And if I may want to pull the light intensity down a little bit. Awesome. So now I've got this nice shading, but it's all blurry and crummy. And so I could do the same trick that I did on the stroke, right? I can grab that CC composite effect and I can say composite the original as a stencil alpha. Instead of silhouette alpha, stencil alpha means it's going to knock out that layer anywhere that there is no alpha. So it takes the original unblurred, unbeveled thing and it just uses it as a matte. And now it's all one layer. Now the reason I made this gray is because now I can go into my mode and I can use some of these different modes here, like hard light. And hard light is going to brighten the bright pixels and darken the dark pixels. And, let me kind of step through what I did here. I have my bevel alpha, right, which looks like garbage, but then I fast blurred that to make it a little bit softer and more spherical looking. And then I used the CC composite to get rid of all the blurry parts I didn't want. And what's cool is that this is working on a layer that's moving. So you can see even here, you get some nice little shading to it. That's just fantastic. All right, and then the last thing I did, let me duplicate base color one more time. We'll call this shiny. I wanted like a nice kind of light specular hit to this whole thing. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same trick I did with depth. I'm going to fill. I'm just going to copy the fill effect here. Fill my layer with gray. And I'm going to use an effect. I've actually never used it before. And it's called CC Plastic. It's a really interesting effect. And it basically kind of does the same thing as bevel alpha, except it does it in a way that makes things look very shiny. And After Effects is filled with a lot of these CC effects that, they're really the only way to get the hang of them is to just try each one. Like I couldn't tell you, I have no idea what Mr. Smoothie does, but I'm sure there is some useful purpose for it. But plastic seemed to do exactly what I wanted in this case, which is give me a nice specular. And so what I wanted to do was, instead of using the luminance of my layer, right? So it takes a layer and it uses some property of that layer to create sort of a fake 3D version of it. So instead of luminance, I'm going to use alpha. And I'm going to soften it a little bit so that I get a little bit more of like a nice little specular hit there. And I'm going to adjust the height so we get something like that. And then I'm just going to go down to shading and mess with these settings. So I can turn the roughness up and you see more, or if you turn it down, you see less. It becomes a little bit harder of a specular. Metal kind of makes that specular spread out a little bit more. And I kind of wanted that nice hard specular. Now, because I did this on a gray layer, and actually maybe the thing to do is to do it on a black layer. So now I can set the transfer mode of this to add, right? And so now I'm just going to get a nice glow there. And because it's working on this pre-comp, which has all this motion to it, you'll see it even sort of follows the contours of the dots as they're ripping apart. So now we've got all of these layers to this image, but they're all built up from different copies of the same comp. And this makes it really easy if I want to, if for some reason I wanted that specular highlight to be a different color, well, that'd be really easy now. I could use like, a tint effect, and I could tint that white to be maybe that yellow color and get a little bit of, let's try that orange one. Yeah, and just get like a different kind of feel to it. And then you can also do stuff like this. Is another thing I do. If I wanted these to cast a shadow, instead of using an effect to make that shadow, I might just duplicate a layer, call it shadow, and maybe fill it with, let's pick a nice dark color here. So why don't we use this as the basis for our shadow, but then darken it even more. And then I'll just use a fast blur. And I'm just gonna move this layer down and over a little bit, turn the opacity down. Right, and so now I've got a shadow that I have total control over too. Right, so what I'm hoping you guys are seeing is that, you can try and get things to look the way you want by just trying to find the right effect and trying to find the right settings. But a lot of times it's better if you break your image down into separate pieces and just figure out that one piece at a time. How do I make a stroke? How do I add some depth? How do I add like a nice shiny specular to it? How do I add a shadow to it? And just break it down piece by piece so you have total control. One little thing too that I want to point out. So on the little demo here, this is exactly how I made this. The only difference is if we come in and we look at this, there's one extra little piece, which is the little splatter. So let me just copy that. And put that in our comp. So when that splits, you get that nice little splatter. This is actually an example of what's called secondary animation. And I've used this term incorrectly in the past, but what's happening is these two balls are, ripping apart, and that's causing a reaction of sort of this burst of smaller kind of particles in the middle. And that burst is the secondary animation, right? The primary is the two things ripping apart, and the secondary is that burst. Another thing I didn't do in this demo yet, let me show you, because this will just help a little bit too, is I didn't do any squash and stretch, and that can really help. And what all you need to do is basically adjust and keyframe the scale of these balls. So let's go forward to this frame here, and let's just stretch both of these out a little bit. Let's make them stretch to like 110. And when you're doing squash and stretch, if you stretch by 10%, you need to shrink by 10% on the other axis, right? So X goes up 10, Y goes down 10. And that way you can maintain the same volume, right? So it's going to stretch out, and it's going to probably stretch out even a little more until about here. So now let's go to 120 and 80. And then when it gets over here, it's going to squash a little bit, because now it's gone really fast and now it's slowed down. So let's bring this to like 95 and 105. And just notice I'm always making sure that those two values add up to 200. And then it's going to go back to normal. So now it's going to go to 100, 100. All right, and now let's take a look at our animation curves. All right, and you can see that they're very sharp. And so I'm just going to sort of manually go through and make sure that there's no hard edges here, and that when things get to extremes, there's these nice eases. Right? And in general, I mean, it's you're just looking for nice, smooth animation curves. You don't always want that, but it's a good rule of thumb to aim at that and then adjust if it turns out that's not what you want. Let's take a look at what we got. Yeah. And you can see, and I need to do it to the other one, but that just adds a little bit more oomph and momentum to it. All right, so let's do the same thing here. And then we should be good to go. So while I'm adjusting this, I just want to say, try this stuff out. I know that it's nice when you watch a video and maybe you learn some new tricks, but if you don't use it, it's not actually going to stick in your brain. And usually, for me, to be honest, it doesn't work and stick in my brain until I use it twice. So if you actually take the time to rebuild this whole setup and then go through the process of experimenting with all of these different layers and trying to get, a 3D effect that looks the way you want, you're gonna kind of wrap your head around this better, and it's gonna be more useful to you. So that little squash and stretch actually did help a lot. It makes it look a lot more sticky and goopy. So there you go. We kind of jumped all over the place in this video, but what I really hope you got, in addition to like a neat little trick, which maybe is useful, I hope you understand that you can do stuff like this with literally any layer in After Effects. And then, once you're done, you can just pre-comp all these together and just call this Goopy, right? And so now you've got all of that work and it's all saved. And if you want to, then have like 3 copies of this, it's really easy to do. And so, think in terms of breaking effects down and breaking them into individual components that you have total control over. And if you ever decide to learn Nuke, working this way in After Effects is going to be very helpful because it's going to help your brain work the right way, because in Nuke, this is sort of how you have to think. Anyway, I hope this was useful. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time on 30 Days of After Effects.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned some cool stuff, and I hope it rearranged some things in your brain that will help you think a little bit more like a compositor, even when you're doing animation and design in After Effects, because the 2 disciplines have a lot of overlap. You can really become a better motion graphics artist by working on your compositing skills. If you have any questions or thoughts about this lesson, let us know. And don't forget to sign up for a free student account to access project files for the lesson you just watched, plus a whole bunch of other goodies. Thank you so much for watching this. I hope you got a lot out of it, and I will see you next time.